Hi, boys and girls. So one of the things that you are going to need to do over the next couple of weeks is to take a couple of reading assessments on the ThinkCentral website. And it's a website that you probably have not used at all this year. I know that some of the kids in my class tested it out for me, and so I really appreciate that. And so that was very helpful. And so I'm going to show everybody now how you can log in to ThinkCentral so that you can take your reading tests that you'll need to take this week and then next week as well. It's really easy, and I'll walk you through the steps, okay? So the first thing you have to do is I opened up my browser, and I'm going to log in. The first thing I have to do is I have to type in the website. Now the website for ThinkCentral is a little bit different. It's not exactly the same as some websites because it's www, but there's no period. It's not like www dot. It's www dash or hyphen, which is right up next to the 0, and it's k6 dot thinkcentral.com slash EPC. Oh, actually, I'm just going to do .com, okay? And then I'm going to click, and it's going to take me to ThinkCentral. Now, for me, I have it saved. I use ThinkCentral a lot, so this is already logged in for me. But I'm going to actually take that off so I can show you how you will log in, okay? Now, the first time you log in, you will have to make these selections. So you click the little arrow here, and all of the different countries come up. So we live in the United States, of course. Then you're going to have to fill in the state, so you're just going to scroll until you find Ohio. Now the district might be a little tricky just because we are a Catholic school, so we're going to find Archdiocese of Cincinnati. So it's right here, it says Archdiocese of Cincinnati, Education Office, Cincinnati. So that's our district. And then once we have our district, then we can pull up our school. So we could pull up, there is Incarnation School. All right, and if you click this check mark here where it says remember my school, you shouldn't have to fill in any of this anymore. So that's pretty handy, okay? So I've got that filled out. So now what I need to do is I need to figure out what my username and password is. Now, your username and password are a little bit different. So your username is going to be your first name, and sorry, Andrew Patch, I'm using you. So I'm going to type in Andrew.Patch, okay? But then there's also .inc, so it's Andrew.Patch.inc. So whatever your first name is, put a period, and then your last name, put a period, and then put INC for Incarnation. That is what your username is, okay? Now your password is also a little bit different, okay? So it's really important for this that you really follow directions, okay? So you're going to think about what's your first name. So for my example, Andrew is A, so I'm going to put a capital A. And unfortunately, you can't see that. Now his last name is Patch, so I'm going to put a lowercase p. And then I'm going to put the hyphen, which is right up here next to the 0, hyphen. And then the rest of his password are those numbers that you use in the cafeteria. If you're not quite sure what that number is, it's a 422 number, and it's also your password for AR quizzes. So it isn't exactly the same as AR because you have to put your first and last initial with the hyphen, but then once you get your first and last initial and the hyphen, the rest of your password are those numbers that are your cafeteria number or your AR quiz number. So once I've got that in, and you can't see it unfortunately, you can click log in. And it's going to sign me up as Andrew. Now, it might ask you if you want to save your passwords. All right, so I'm logged in as Andrew Patch, and you can see up here it says Andrew Patch. And so then what you're going to do is you're going to click Things to Do. You can click up here, things to do, or you can click here, things to do. So I'm going to click there. And you can see that there is an assessment right here. It says Find School Assessment. Now this is actually the first story in our reading book. So you're just going to click. See how when I hover over Find School, it kind of gets bold and there's a line under it? That's a hyperlink. And so that means if you click on it, it'll take you to the assessment. So you're going to click on the test. Now you're going to actually have to click on this twice. Let me show you what happens. So I'm going to click on it once, and it didn't do anything. It just says that it's due. It just tells me that I have to do it. So in order to actually take the assessment, you actually then have to click on it again. So I'm going to click on it again, and here are the directions. Now for this one, I only am doing 4 questions. You will normally have maybe 20 questions. So it says how to take the test. So you're going to click next to go to the next question. You'll click back if you want to go to a previous question. And then you can change your answer whenever you need to until you click that score test. So once you click score test, you can't go back and change your answers. When you're taking your weekly tests, you are allowed to use your book and look up the answers. If you're not sure about something, please use your book and look up the answers. All right, so I am going to click Start the Test. Okay, and so the first couple of questions are vocabulary questions. All right, so it says answer questions. Now it says 1 through 10, but I'm only giving you 2. So it says, what does the word strolled mean in the sentence below? Mr. Yates strolled through the hallways of our school. Now you may not remember because this is our first story this year, but strolled was one of the vocabulary words that we worked on a lot. And so strolled, I remember, means that we walked slowly. So I'm going to click on the little button here for walked slowly, and then I'll click next. Okay, and then our next vocabulary question says, what does the word worried mean in the sentence below? And just like strolled, worried was one of our vocabulary words that we practiced a lot the week that we did a Find School. And so it says, Mother was worried about Aunt Sue. Well, here are my choices: angry, talking, upset, or writing. And I remembered worried meant that you were upset or uneasy. So I'm going to click upset, and then I'm going to click next. The next 2 questions on this sample are comprehension. And you will have comprehension questions for the next couple of weeks too. You'll have 10 questions, I believe. So why does Mr. Keene want to have more days of school? If you remember that story, Mr. Keene just kept adding more days of school. And so here are my choices. It's always, always, always important to read all the choices. He loves the school. That could be it. He's a mean principal. I kind of remember he was really nice and the kids really liked him. He thinks the students are not learning enough. He thinks the teachers are not doing a good job of teaching. Well, if I go back and look at that story again, I know that he just loved his school, and it just kept saying about how he loved his school and all the learning that was going on, and all the teachers and the students working so hard. And so he just really loved the school. So I'll click next. All right, Tilly was our main character. What does Tilly do on the weekends before Mr. Keene asked the students to come to school on Saturdays and Sundays? So once again, I'm going to read all the choices. Tilly is bored. Tilly goes to the grocery store. Tilly goes to visit Mr. Keene at school. Tilly climbs a tree and walks her dog. Now I remember she wasn't bored, and I know that the story never said anything about going to the grocery store or going to school to visit Mr. Keene. So I'm pretty sure I remember she climbed trees and walked her dog. So for the sample, this was my last question. So I'm going to click Score Test. And once I score the test, it says that all of my questions have been answered, and I can click score test again, and it says, are you sure you want to score your test? And I do, because I definitely answered all the questions. This would be a good time for you to look at the test review. Maybe you weren't sure about one of the questions, so you skipped it. So if it doesn't say that all questions were answered, you might want to go back to the test. But since all of my questions were answered, I do want to score my test. So I'm going to click OK. Because remember, once I click score the test and click OK, I can't go back and change anything. So if I accidentally left questions blank, they're just going to be marked wrong. So be really careful about that. So I'm going to click OK. And it's going to, oh, well, I did really well. I got all 4 of them right. So it says 4 out of 4. All 4 of them were right. And now your teacher can open this up on her computer and she can see how you did on your test. And once you're finished taking the test, you can click close, and then it's going to show that this assessment has been completed. Okay? So that's what we're going to do for the next 2 weeks in reading. We're going to take our online assessments here, and then you don't have to do the reader's guide in your Journeys workbook. Okay? All right. Just remember, if you have any questions or have any trouble, just to make sure you have your parents email your teacher, and they can help you. I do find that it does work a little bit better on the computer versus an iPad or an iPhone. Okay? So if you have access to a computer, it works a little bit better on that. All right.